Hello and welcome to Scott Rock, our brand new podcast by Climb Scotland, bringing you climbing stories and mountain tales from Scottish underdogs and local heroes.
Your hosts are the legendary, me, Callum McBain, and...
me, Robert Mackenzie. Callum, what is the plan, bud?
Well, we both love interview podcasts, and for our jobs we get to travel around and speak to loads of different climbers. So we thought we would combine both of these things and share the stories we hear through this podcast.
That's right, we're not just interviewing the hardcore among you, but literally anyone that we think has a cool story to tell. And we know that there's a lot of you out there.
So keep an eye out every fortnight for the latest climber chat. And if you have anyone you'd like to hear from, or if you want to be in the show yourself, let us know and spread the Scott Rock word.
And remember guys, when you get back out there climbing, back to the crags, back to the walls, be safe and do your buddy checks. Enjoy the podcast.
Today's episode is with my long-suffering partner in life, crime, and sometimes climbing too, Rebekah Drummond. Together, we have two wonderful, adventurous, and sometimes pretty difficult daughters, Lucy and Innes, who you'll hear a little bit from in the interview. Now, this is a bit of an ad hoc one, but there's some good chat about motherhood and climbing, a couple of interesting questions about climbing couples as well, and a few inspirational people in Becca's climbing career. Now, I'm sure everyone who's been working from home recently is pretty used to having your toddler running into your Zoom meetings or Skype calls or whatever. So there is a few interruptions from a naked toddler running in, and a few from a very hungry 6-month-old. But if you can get past that, there's some good chat in there too. So, here you go. Rebekah Drummond.
Right.
Okay, right.
Take 4.
Take like 100 and whatever. So, today, sitting down with Rebekah Drummond and Innes Drummond McBain, who's the small 4-month-old who will be supplying the grunting and heavy breathing in the background of this podcast. It's too awkward for me to introduce you, Rebekah, so I think you should just give yourself an introduction. Who are you? Who is Rebekah Drummond?
What do you want me to say about myself?
Well, just like who you are.
I am Rebekah, like you've already said. I am a climber. I'm currently on maternity leave with my 4-month-old. I have a 2-year-old as well. I work as a catering manager at the moment, but I like to spend most of my time going climbing, or trying to, as much as you can, with 2 kids and a job and coronavirus. So actually I don't do any climbing at all. I just hang off of a fingerboard and pretend that I like to go climbing.
Yeah, I suppose calling yourself a climber right now is probably in the loosest sense of the term possible. It's more likely you're someone who likes hanging off a bit of wood and looking at pictures of climbing online.
Yeah.
I suppose where did your climbing journey kind of start? Like, how did you get into climbing?
So I think when I was about 6 or 7, my mum got really into climbing, like obsessively into climbing. Like whoever is a climber is always obsessively into it, I guess, and just involved me in it as well. And I was pretty psyched. And she took me to the wall. And when she started going outdoor climbing, she got me involved as well. We went on like lots of holidays together. She used to after school, I think once a week we'd go when I was younger. After school, she'd drive us the half an hour or 45 minutes or whatever to the climbing wall. She'd climb with me for like an hour and a half. And then my dad would come and pick me up, and then she would climb with her partner for a little bit, and then I'd stay at my dad's and we'd get up really early and drive back to school in the morning, or we'd just drive back later in the evening. And then once I was older and I could belay and things as well, I would just climb with the both of them at the climbing wall or outside. And then when I was maybe about, I can't remember when I started getting into comps, early teens?
When was it your mum first started taking you climbing too? Like, what age were you?
Around 6, I think. 6. And
pretty young.
yeah, I remember. I remember being dropped off. I think my dad took me to the kids club at in Dundee, and I remember being definitely told to lie about my age. Or no, maybe I didn't get told to lie about my age. Maybe my dad just lied about my age to the instructors, and then when the instructors asked what my age was, I was just like, I'm 6, and then my dad had to get called for me to get picked up because we had to be. I think it was like 7 or 8 or something.
Oh no, your dad is that annoying parent that
Yeah,
didn't follow the rules.
Yeah, and then I started doing comps when I was in my teens and just like stopped climbing outside pretty much altogether. And then got back into... I did learn how to trad climb when I was really young, like 7 or something like that, but like wasn't... As soon as I hit like 12, or I think I was just so much more interested in climbing indoors, where it was kind of like warm and there were no midges and it didn't rain, and I was more into comps that I just didn't really do any more outside climbing or any trad climbing. And then when in my late teens got back into that again, wasn't really interested in doing comps, kind of like fell out of love with them, and then got my groove back trad wise. It was kind of like relearning to trad climb again. It was quite funny. It was good fun. Sorry, that was a bit of a waffle.
What? I think like all of these podcasts are probably waffle. Probably doing a more apt name for the podcast.
Yeah.
Climbing waffles.
Yeah.
What I was thinking. I suppose this is something that I know, but it's interesting that your mum didn't really come from like, she wasn't like a climbing from kid kind of person. Like, it wasn't a big part of your family. Your mum got into climbing when she was older, didn't she? And then you got into climbing with her.
Yeah, so how old would I have been? I think my mum would have been in her early 30s when she got into climbing. Yeah, that sounds about right. With no climbing background. I should probably ask her why she got into climbing.
Yeah,
I think my dad maybe went for an instructor's course or something. And they're not together, but my mum was probably just like, oh, that sounds fun. And then my dad didn't actually take it up whatsoever, but my mum maybe took it up. I'm not entirely sure. I should ask her.
Maybe she can be the next person we interview for the
Yeah.
podcast. We can do a socially distant Sonia Drummond podcast. So yeah, that's like the kind of classic. I suppose a lot of younger climbers nowadays go through the same process where it's like indoor climbing and then competitions, and then you kind of branched into outdoors. I suppose something else is quite interesting. Like, you had quite a lot of trips when you were like 17 or 18, like reasonably young, where you went to pretty like far-flung locations for someone that age. Maybe like tell us a bit more about those trips and kind of how they changed your view of climbing.
So, I think I've always been I was always quite an independent kid. Like my mum went back to uni when I was quite young, and I've always been like, I could cook for myself and do other things, and so
it's funny.
Independent or stubborn.
There's another little child we have that's pretty independent and stubborn. I can see where she gets it from now.
So, I moved. I say moved out when I was 17. I constantly moved in and out of parents' houses when I was 17. So I just don't know. I just didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. I went to uni, I dropped out of uni, went on climbing holidays, repeated that cycle a few times. And I guess climbing's the one thing that's kind of stayed constant with me through all of that. And it's like various forms of climbing. Like, it's not just been... Yeah, it's like changed for me.
Where were the first few trips you went abroad?
So I had my first trip on my... no, say not on my own, but without any parents, was a trip to Font when I was 16, which didn't involve a lot of climbing. So there's that. But then I went to, no, I think I was 15 actually. Yeah, that was when I was 15. And then
was Gaz Vincent on that trip as well?
No,
no, okay.
No, that was
another Font trip.
That was another Font trip.
Yeah.
No, that was an MCMS trip
okay,
to Font, where it rained most of the time. But I went to Seus when I was 16, which was a really good trip. And looking back on it now, I definitely would have played out things a lot different. I think I went for... my boyfriend at the time was already there with 2 other kind of friends from the climbing wall, and I flew out to meet them on my own after a comp. Comp didn't go well. Was feeling a bit rubbish about it. Probably I think I'd just come back from being injured. I got injured quite a lot. And we went out, and I basically tried the same route for 2 weeks straight, because if you've been to Seus, you know that the stuff around the kind of 6C, 7A level, it's really hard. And my 16-year-old ego, I don't think, could take falling off of grades that I would regularly climb on site easily indoors. And so I just tried the 7C plus for 2 weeks, and eventually did it classic last shot, last trip of the trip. And looking back on it now, we said we were just trying this one route because we didn't want to queue for all the other things, and it was too hot in the other areas, and blah 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 blah. But I was really scared, didn't want my ass kicked on these other routes, and I was really scared of falling off as well. So maybe I would have played it different if definitely play it different now. I'd go back and try all these other amazing 7Bs and stuff like that, and not really be scared about getting my ass handed to me. Can I say ass?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We'll skim over it really quickly. So.
Where were we? What question did you ask me?
We're talking about your earlier trips. So there was Font,
Seus. I've been, did I go anywhere else? I can't. I've been to, and then I went to India a couple times. I went to Hampi when I was 17. Which was probably one of the best trips of my life. Yeah, probably. Just because, I don't know, it was just so different. Not for the climbing wise, just going out and experiencing different cultures and a sense of a bit more freedom. Even though my mum still booked the train and stuff for us because I wasn't exceedingly capable, but just being out there was just so much fun. We're out there. I were out for a month, I think, and then I went back. Was it the next year or the year after for a couple months? And that time I flew out by myself, and that's definitely. And I wasn't sure how I was going to get from Bangalore, where you fly to Hampi, whether I was going to try and I think did I try and book a bus? But there was local buses which were much cheaper, but I wasn't really sure. And I just remember arriving at Bangalore in the dark on my own, and just kind of wandering around the bus station, and no one would. I was trying to pronounce this city called Gangavati that I wanted to go to, but none of the people could understand me. It's just oh crap, it's dark and I don't know what I'm doing. But eventually there's someone that spoke English that could understand, white foreign girl, and got on a local bus and managed to do the changeover and things like that. It was probably a miracle that I got anywhere. Not most organised. And then went to Spain after that. Got bored of bouldering in India. I should have. I wish that I just travelled around India a bit more instead of just staying in one place and climbing. But But then went to Spain and lived out the back of the Suzuki Wagon for a little while. I just not long past my driving.
I think you need to I was going to say the viewers, but for the listeners, you need to explain exactly how big a Suzuki Wagon is.
Well, they probably shouldn't be called wagons.
Well, that's it's a bit misleading.
Yeah, they're small. They're 4-seater, but the boot is.
They don't even have 5 seats.
Oh no, 5-seater.
Okay, I was like, well, that's really small.
Or is it? I'm not sure. Anyway, but they're small cars. It was an R+. Suzuki.
Does that mean it goes
R.
really fast?
Yeah. But we had a tent as well, so there was that. The Suzuki Wagon in the tent.
How long did you stay in the wagon for?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know. We were in Spain for 2 months. But we stayed with a friend in France for maybe a couple of weeks. But that got pretty. It was, I think, February or March when we were out there, and I kind of assumed that Spain would be warm at night, but there was ice on the outside of our tent in the morning. It was so cold. It warmed up and it got a bit better. But when we went to Albarracín, we realised you're not allowed to, and Siran actually, you're not allowed to pitch your tent. So when you can't pitch your house and you live out in a Suzuki wagon, it's like a bit uncomfortable. So we tried sleeping on two boulder mats, and then quickly realised that you should definitely sleep under trees if you're sleeping on boulder mats, because it's horrible if you wake up in the morning and touch the outside of your sleeping bag and your sleeping bag is just saturated with condensation. So it was a bit grim.
I always kind of thought that sport climbing and bouldering trips are meant to be nice and pleasant. I think it sounds like you guys brought Alpine Suffering into Tirana. Yeah, it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I think I came home feeling a bit deflated. Not deflated, that's not the right word. Just worn out.
I think a month of
wanting change. Yeah.
Yeah, a month of staying in a car would probably do that to most people.
I think it was more like 2 months.
2 months,
and I was just
yeah.
blown exhausted from driving back from Spain on my own. Not on my own. My partner was in the car, but he couldn't drive, so.
Oh god. Just actually, before we go on, I wanted to backtrack something because it just cropped up in my head. Because you were talking about when you were in Seyouz trying Serpent de... I can't remember the name of it. Oh god, I really hope we don't have any French people listen to this.
Privilege of snake. Privilege to serpent. Anyway.
But yeah, because you'd mentioned that you'd convinced yourselves, in inverted commas, at the time you were trying that because of loads of different reasons. But looking back on it now, it's because you didn't want to get your ass handed to you by a 6E around the corner or whatever. It was kind of safe to retreat into one hard route and fail on a hard route than fail on what seems like easy routes. But is there a point in your climbing where you either really suddenly came to that realization, or that there was a shift in your mindset that allowed you to see that, or was it a really gradual thing?
I mean, I think it's probably just really gradual. I think it's just a growing up thing. I don't think it's very few teenagers that I don't think it's a climbing thing specifically. I think it's an age thing of not wanting to look a certain way, or just teenage ego, basically.
I suppose it plays into, I don't know if it's just limited to teenagers, because a lot of a Hazel Finlay sort of chat and stuff that goes out, fear of failure, I guess, it seems super common amongst all
I guess
parts of climbing now.
I was in the British junior climbing team at this point, and I didn't really want to look like I was failing on all these other things and admit to being this actually sub-average climber when you'd built yourself up to be this actually quite good climber.
You have to answer this question honestly. Were you wearing your GB kit at the crag?
Oh, I definitely wasn't. I definitely wasn't.
I'm sure I found one of your GB bags lying around and I was tempted to take it to the climbing wall, but I don't think anyone would buy that. I was in Team GB.
They're stored as relics.
Antiques.
When I was average at climbing for my age.
Exceedingly average.
Exceedingly average.
It's quite good. It still blows my mind, to be honest, the India trip. For someone... I think I would still be scared to go to India by myself as an adult, never mind as a young person. Seems suppose, testament to you just kind of putting yourself out there and seeing what happens.
It was the first time I went. I was with my boyfriend at the time, so it was like the two of us going out, and it was like you kind of go into like a safe haven in Hampy as well. It's like this. It's
kind of
just like an island
place.
of for climbers basically. It's like camp climbing, like a little camp for climbers. It's like the bouldering Kalymnos, but in India and more chill and less 5-star hotel, more.
It's not quite
hot.
midnight in Delhi, kind of.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was quite intimidating. Going when we first arrived, and everyone. I'm blonde hair, blue eyes, very pale.
You must have stuck out like a sore thumb in India.
Like everyone wants to get a picture taken with you because you look so different, and I was obviously like looking quite young as well, and on my own, not on my own, but the two of us, we kind of just. It was nice. Yeah.
That's quite an interesting one actually. 'Cause I'm curious to know how you answer it, but you can have more than one person as well. But is there any people that you identify as being like pivotal in your climbing journey, and who are they and why do you think they're pivotal?
Well, obviously my mum. I don't think I could answer that question without mentioning my mum.
Definitely.
Who like got me into climbing and also like gave up a lot of her time to take me climbing, to like ship me to all ends of the country to go to comps or whatever. But also when I was younger, like she'd take me on holidays with her and her partner. Like we went, I think when I was 7, we went down to Portland and did like a load of my first sport climbs. Like did my first sport leads, and we went to Little Tryfan.
Oh God, we should not talk about Welsh names because we will not do well.
Went to some really easy Welsh slab, and I did my first trad leads there. And like that's her holiday time that she spent taking me places, like, and she was obviously climbing too. And sorry, goodness is looking like she's doing a poo. Yeah, Mum's been like a constant. She's just spewing everywhere.
You're laughing because Innes is slowly spewing all over you, and it's quite good. It's quite good you're not reacting to it.
Wait a second, I'm mopping this up.
I think this is the first person that's thrown up in the Scott Rock podcast.
My mum, yeah.
Wales,
she's just been, and Wales, driving me to the climbing wall, beeling me while I was training. Like, in Dundee, where I'm from, it's not like a big city where there was a youth team or a big climbing wall or whatever where you could just like drop your kid off and then they'd get all this nice coaching. It's like my mum would take me to the climbing wall and beeling me. There wasn't, like, my climbing wall is very small and it was her, that put the time in with me. And even just like, encouraging me, when I dropped out of uni and went climbing in India, there was never like a bad word about it. It was always just encouraging. And then when I did it the second time, when I dropped out of uni again and went to India, it was the same. Or when I dropped out of uni and went to Spain a third time.
Or dropped out of uni and had a child? Is that the fourth time?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a recurrent theme.
It's always been like incredibly encouraging. And then, Neil McGhee, definitely. I think a lot of any kids that are around my age that did comps in Scotland would definitely put Neil McGhee as someone that inspired them or was like a pivotal turning point in their climbing.
I suppose for all our newer age listeners, who is Neil McGhee, sometimes called Geek?
He was, I guess, before your job existed, he was like you. I don't really know, but he did a lot of route setting, loads of kids coaching at the time. Worked doing that kind of stuff. But he wrote me a training plan. Me and my friend, me and another boy, Rory from Aberdeen, and sometimes another lady, Donna, and her kids would go to his garage to train because we weren't living next to a climbing wall, and he never charged us for this. We just would all rock up to his house and like train on this 70-degree board. And I remember when like before I would go and do comps, I'd always get these like messages from Geek, like the morning before, the night before, being like these huge paragraphs about how I shouldn't stress out. You know, you've been training really hard. Like you deserve, not you deserve. That's not the right word. He didn't say things like that. But like there's no need to stress out about this because you're good enough. You've been doing this, like all these super nice things, and that's something I'll definitely remember forever. And then even now, Geek actually has a kid that's just a little bit older than Lucy, and we're still climbing together. He's definitely like one of my favourite guys to climb with. Like if I was gonna do any kind of like big route or whatever that I really wanted to do, if I had to choose someone to hold my ropes, it would definitely be Neil. Probably for both me and maybe me and my mum would be Andy Nisbet as well, who sadly passed away quite recently. I think so. My mum actually saw him for a little while when I was maybe like, I can't remember how old I was, like 10 or 11 or something, or 12, I don't know. And he did a lot of trad climbing stuff with me. Like we went and like just a lot of generally like cool stuff, like more teaching me more how to trad climb, and we went and did like big multi-pitch sport climbing in the Pyrenees together, and like with him and my mum. So, and him and my mum did like loads of new routing and took me winter climbing a couple times, and just like I guess allowed this more adventurous kind of climbing where mum might have not been like happy taking me just on my own. Like he was happy to like have a kid drag along with him, even if I like bailed at the bottom of the route because I had a headache or whatever. And I think Andy also paid for quite a lot of my climbing wall entries for a while as well, because me and my mum weren't like super well off. So
that's a really interesting mix of characters, isn't it? I suppose especially Andy, because he kind of, if there's someone that was going to show you a bit of love for like traditional Scottish climbing, like Andy probably was pretty high up there.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's anyone to like serve a trad apprenticeship with, it would be
definitely.
It'd be Andy.
Another really interesting, or another thing that I kind of wanted to chat about was, so you've done like the indoor stuff, then you went outdoors, and then you're kind of still involved with the indoor scene to some extent now, but maybe in a slightly different way. Do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
So I do route setting for MCVS, and I did route setting at like various other climbing walls as well. But that's something I really enjoy, is route setting, and it's really fun seeing how all the kids do on your routes and problems.
Do you think there's been like, having been involved in the comp scene ages ago and now kind of seeing it from the route setter's perspective, do you think anything is, what are the biggest changes?
Oh, it's harder.
Just generally harder.
It's just generally harder.
What was the hardest grades that you got in like the...
I was more like, because the hard routes were still hard, but it's more like our first route, like even as like the oldest category or whatever, was always like jugs on a vert wall, like bucket jugs. Yeah. And now you get like your first route's still kind of sketchy, I guess, for
run and jump dyno in the on the route.
They're more like formal now, or not formal, just like a bit more uptight.
What was
from a route service perspective?
What was looser about them back in the day?
Or maybe I just didn't notice because I wasn't the one like route setting or whatever, where there's like got to be 4 points of contact on the starting holds, or like all these holds have to be taped, or blah 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 blah. Like there was like, I guess, or I feel like there was maybe more onus on you as a competitor to like
look at
know what
holds.
you're doing. Yeah.
Which is odd, because that's almost like completely opposite of the grade thing, where you'd expect the kids were not as good at climbing back then, but then more is expected of them. Whereas now they climb harder, but maybe more things are
like, oh, there was another route, another hold on my panel, which was a completely different colour, but I totally thought it was mine. That's the way I remember it anyway. But maybe it was just the same. Maybe it was still like,
yeah, it's like nostalgia.
Folks stressing over things.
What about like the styles of route? Do you think it's a definitely... Because everyone always thinks that the modern stuff is like parkour, whereas old school was the one of the strongest fingers will win this competition.
I'm trying to remember. Like, it wasn't super long ago that I was competing, if that makes sense, like roots-wise. Well, yeah, it was actually quite
10 years
ago.
ago?
Oh, Jesus Christ, yeah, that's a long time ago. Yeah, like they didn't have these like big, huge, volumey kind of things, and yeah, less like run and jumpy, kind of weird boulder problemy kind of stuff. But no, it's quite interesting setting these kind of things now, because it might not be the kid with the strongest fingers that comes out on top. It's like who understands how to do all these different kinds of movement rather than just like can crank down on crimps.
The kid that also was part of a parkour club.
Yeah.
And can crank down in crimps as well.
Yeah. They can actually read sequences.
Yeah, it's funny. It's always like still like that's probably a consistent issue throughout, or at least I've noticed. Like root reading still seems to be like a massive.
Yeah, if you want to make the younger kids fall off, all you need to do is like set a definite sequence where you have to like cross through or something like that. But to be honest, they'll probably still just like match all the holds and totally screw over whatever you're trying to make them do. But
or use all the footholds as handholds.
yeah,
classic. I suppose the other really big topic I'd like to talk about for this podcast is the thing you're holding on to right now.
the baby,
the small wriggling child.
Yeah.
Because what age were you when you had Lucy? So Lucy is our older.
Yeah,
toddler,
Lucy's
2.5.
2.5, almost 3 actually. So I was 20 when I was pregnant with her, and then I just turned 21 before I had her. So quite young.
Yeah, so reasonably young in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
avoided teenage pregnancy by a year.
Yay! And what age were you in Innis? You must be like 22 or 23 when you Innis or second.
23. Yeah, 23. I'm 23. I am 23.
Yeah, I'm 23 now. So, like, I suppose, how has motherhood kind of changed your experience? Because obviously climbing's still a part of your life, but
Yeah.
how has motherhood changed that part of your life?
Well, we don't climb as much. Or, like, I guess this is you as well, not just me. Like,
Climbing couples sort of thing.
yeah, no, that's a lie, actually. We do, well, right now we don't, but we do climb as much. It's just different. Like, we're not going out and doing mountain routes at the moment, which I think is, it's fine. Mountains are going to be there when they're older. But we live next to climbing, so we're still, and like nice roadside stuff, so we take the kids to the crag or whatever, and we have friends, yeah, like Geek, that have kids, and we still go climbing. But I actually think that having Lucy definitely changed my climbing for the better, in a way that, so yeah, you have less time to go climbing. So I wasn't going to the wall, like I used to, at uni in Glasgow, I used to cycle to uni for the morning, then cycle to TCA on my lunch break, climb, cycle back to uni for the afternoon, do my like afternoon stuff, cycle back to TCA, climb in the evening, go back home, and then just like repeat that with, maybe a rest day here, maybe a rest day there. But that's not particularly conductive to getting better. So now when I had Lucy and I can't do that much, I'm forced to rest. And, through that, like, resting and, like, actually being focused in your time that you do get to climb, suddenly I'm like, oh, actually, I'm much better. My body's actually, like, getting a chance to recover. It turns out you actually, like, get better when you do less.
Yeah. And the sessions that you do are shorter, but
they're like productive, because you're feeling fresh because you didn't get to climb yesterday, and you're psyched to be there. Whenever I go to the climbing wall now, it's not like I'm dragging my feet and I'm like, I'm like, oh my god, I want to go climbing. And the same when I go out and outside, it used to be I was like maybe a bit nervous to get on routes because I really wanted to do it, so maybe the temps weren't right, or like there's something that is like an excuse, but now it's just like, this is my chance. Like, she might wake up in a minute, gonna get on with it, and suddenly you like, get better because you're actually just like doing it and enjoying it.
You can lose a lot of your excuses, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is your opportunity, you must take it.
Doesn't matter if the conditions are bad.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's sweaty.
Yeah. But that was after having Lucy.
Well, has it changed again after having...
Well, I don't know yet, because we had, like, definitely a very much first world problem thing at the moment during coronavirus, but a little bit annoying, because, I've not been properly climbing for 9 months, was super psyched about having a spring to go out climbing, but I obviously can't. But I think we'll see how it is after having Ennis. My core is a bit, a lot more strained after having Ennis. But I think I've been doing loads of rehab and stuff, so it's getting there. I probably won't be doing any kind of like steep roof climbs for the next little while, but didn't really like doing those anyway.
So we can summarise that having one child will improve your climbing, but 2 we're not sure about yet. Wait 6 months and we can tell you. It's difficult though, because it's like a perspective thing, because we can probably both say we don't climb that much now, but that's because we both came from essentially being full-time climbers who climbed almost every single day. Maybe like if you took the benchmark of a normal person, I'd say we probably still climb more than an average climber.
But like, when we were living in Glasgow, when we moved here with Lucy, we climbed more outdoors than we ever did when we lived in Glasgow for a year. But it's just like situational.
True.
Like we moved you just kind of get like sucked into this city hole where it's like kind of like it takes time to drive anywhere or do anything, or
you get sucked into that terrible, lovely TCA coffee
cake,
and you can never go back outside again. It's too nice in there. It's a little plug for TCA actually. I suppose another thing as well is probably more related, not necessarily to motherhood, but pregnancy and climbing, because you climbed throughout both pregnancies, didn't you?
Yeah.
So Lucy and Innes, and I suppose like maybe some people think that's a little bit controversial still. You maybe get people that don't really.
I think like people that, obviously anyone that doesn't know what climbing is or what climbing's like, how you can make climbing safer. It's just like, dangerous sport. But I think the majority of people are kind of accepting of women climbing, and it was fine with Lucy, but my hips got really sore with Innes, so it was a bit harder. I didn't do that much like actual climbing in the end. Ended up just like doing more kind of like weights and finger training stuff, and still did like a bit of climbing. But
when you say climbing, like what?
Top roping, I guess.
Indoors, outdoors? Or?
Outdoor, seconding, top roping, low level bouldering, indoors, outdoors.
Multi-pitch?
We did some multi-pitch with Lucy, just like kind of not super remote, like in my comfort level kind of stuff. But with Innes, the climbing I think would have been fine if it was like easy, but the thought of like walking on uneven terrain with my pelvis and my hips was just like an absolute no. I think like walking and stuff was actually worse on my hips than climbing was. Maybe it was just wishful thinking saying that, but
yeah, I suppose that's how he chose Sword of Gideon, the multi-pitch with the only, is it a downhill walk-in? Because you can park uphill.
Yeah, but we didn't park uphill. We
Okay.
pardoned.
That was a slight mistake on my part, but I think you probably have like the most, I need to think of an acronym for this, the most pregnant ascent of Magic Crack in Corian Schnechta. MP first
on a Tuesday
by someone called Rebekah.
But yeah, I don't think.
We're talking about
I don't think
climbing.
climbing. Well, being pregnant is the controversial thing that it might once have been, basically.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of women climbing. Most women will bear children at some point. Like, and yet you may maybe choose not to climb when you're pregnant as well. You know, like your hips are agony, or can be agony. You might be like throwing up all the time. It's like pretty reasonable to not want to go climbing. Like climbing, your psyche for climbing kind of ebbs and flows as it is. Never mind like with growing a child. Is what is that, honey? Yeah. So like yeah, you're climbing in general. Like there's always like dips in motivation for climbing, and it's like very reasonable if, you know, while you're growing a whole new human, you're kind of preoccupied with
doing that
something else, or, you know, like you feel sick. Like you shouldn't feel like this pressure to continue your life as normal, because it's not. But if you do feel motivation or good enough or whatever, then there are things you can do, and that might make you feel better.
Does that extend, just something you mentioned there, does that extend into parenthood too? That idea that trying to do what you did before, even though things might have changed. So as in like still trying to maintain that.
Okay, I think we're pretty bad for this.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, trying to continue your life as normal with kids, even though your life is nowhere near normal because you've had kids.
Yeah.
Like still trying to do everything. Like, yeah, no.
It's like
you just end up in like total burnout.
What's the analogy? Yeah, it's burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
I think we're just like a huge ball of
Flames.
Setting everything on fire that touches.
It's hard trying to find time to do like you've got to sacrifice something in the end. Like if you're like time with your family, time with friends, trying to keep your like house sanitary, like training, having time to relax, like something's got to give, and otherwise you just kind of do a bad job at kind of everything.
For us, I think the house is probably the...
Yeah, the house definitely goes first
definitely
for us.
the house.
Like, I'm not too keen, to sacrifice time with kids or climbing.
Oh, another interesting question. This could get real deep, because this is like a... I don't think it's not uncommon to see either women that are prominent climbers and have children, or to see men who have families that are also still prominently into climbing. But I think that it's interesting you don't see particularly many couples that are both very into climbing and have children.
Yeah.
What are your kind of thoughts on that?
I think it's so hard, isn't it? Like we struggle with this because I guess it's not just climbing in general, it's just like generally being obsessive about something. If you have two people that are really obsessive about things, and then kids as well, it's really hard to find time for the both of you to do what you want to do.
Especially if the obsession is similar, I guess.
Yeah. Like I know, like I think there's one famously climbery couple with kids.
Oh, the Italian girl and the James Pearson.
Yeah,
Caroline Giovanni.
Yeah. And but you know, they're professional climbers.
Yeah,
they get to go climbing
to do obsession,
and with their kid. But when you've got to like both work and then both find it's like this constant battle for time. And I don't know, maybe it'd be easier if only one of us climbed, because I don't know, in relationships where one person is like super into climbing or super obsessive about, does the other partner, or do they just get satisfaction from like supporting their partner? Or maybe I'm just super unsupportive and I don't want to support you and I just want to go climbing myself. If you could just give up climbing and look after the kids.
Yeah,
like, where was it? If you see a professional climber, normally male, not like normally male, and they're away on these like, and they've got kids, but it's not like part of their professional persona or whatever, and they've gone away on huge like a month-long, 2-month-long climbing trips, or they've gone big walling or whatever, and you're just it leaves me thinking like, does their partner, do they get this time back? Like they've just like looked after the kids or whatever for a solid 2 months. Do they then get 2 months to go and like bugger off to do what they want to do, or is it just this like they get satisfaction from their partner going and doing this?
I think that's definitely the climber's perspective. It's like, when do I get my 2-month holiday? You've had your 2-month holiday.
They just get like satisfaction. They're happy. They're satisfied from looking after the kids. That's something that they enjoy. That's something that not that I don't enjoy looking after my kids.
It's always hard. It comes across like it's something we struggle with, especially with you doing your like ML training last. Oh god, yeah,
summer.
trying to become like essentially a mountaineering
So you were
instructor at the
spending
same
like
time.
most weekends like out doing
Hell,
ML stuff, and I'm just like silently seething because I'm at home pregnant, looking after Lucy.
I suppose there is like the silver linings of this as well, because if you've got two people that are obsessed with climbing, at least you then get to share your obsession. Like, you both enjoy going out bouldering for the day, rather than one person always wishing they were doing something else. So if you had a runner and a climber together, the runner is probably thinking, oh, I want to go do half marathon right now. Whereas the climber's like, I want to go bouldering. But
we can go out and have family time and all enjoy what we're doing. Yeah, obviously, like it's so good. Like, we can do a little family holiday to go bouldering and things like that, and it's not like one person's stuck on the beach while the other person goes climbing because the other person doesn't want to go climbing. Like, the positives, I think, definitely outweigh the negatives. Because you got your summer of doing ML last year. This is my summer.
I'm cool with that this summer.
yeah. Unless we don't get to go climbing, then next summer my summer.
You don't get any refunds.
Plus, I grew two blown children and took basically 2 years out while you can go and do stuff. So I get that time back. Okay.
3 years in lieu.
Yeah.
Another kind of interesting thing to think about is you have a fairly active Instagram account. Like, I'm pretty terrible with social media. Like, I don't.
No, you're like the worst kind of.
Oh yeah, like I look at yours.
You like no, you don't look at mine. You use yours to like scroll through things pointlessly, but don't actually engage in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
The worst kind of Instagram.
It's worse than using it.
I'm too cool for Instagram. I don't post anything, but secretly just
Stalk
scroll
everyone.
through
Yeah.
it.
But I probably spend more time on Instagram than people that actually use Instagram. Robert is interrupting my podcast. I can answer him for a second and see if it. We're in the middle of a podcast.
Oh, never mind. Crack on.
Bye,
Bye, Robert. Bye.
It's your Instagram account, or you use Instagram, I suppose, and post things.
Yeah.
And a lot of the posts, or some of the posts, are kind of focused around something that I find quite interesting, which is like the reality versus what people post on social media about their lives, what they do, their bodies. So do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts around that?
So I'd mainly just post things that I would like to read, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not super interested in viewing these like kind of fake posed lighting kind of like stuff. So
is there a lot of that on Instagram, do you reckon? Like, as in fake and post?
Yeah, like, if you, not so much on my feed, but if you go to like the like searchy bit and all the like things that pop up, especially if you've like searched for exercises to do while pregnant and things like that, you get quite a lot of just like rubbish. Yeah, of like very backlit posed kind of things that just aren't real. It's not. Yeah, so I don't know, if you follow a lot of like female athletes or a lot of pregnancy and postpartum fitness stuff pops up on your feed or whatever, which if you're me it does.
I don't get so much of that, but
there's very much like this market that feels like it just kind of wants to take advantage of women's insecurities about their body, basically. This like get your body back kind of people just trying to make money off of women's insecurities, which I just find really horrible. And you fall into the trap of it as well. You're just like, oh, that woman she had like abs, and she's had twins. Like, and she followed this. Oh, how much does that cost? Can I afford that? And you're like, no, stop, don't do it. Like, they're just wanting to sell you their supplements and their program, and they've just like they might look like that as well, and it might just be genetics. Like, it's not your body isn't always like this token of how hard you've worked or whatever. It's like just mostly down to genetics.
Yeah, I suppose that happens everywhere, I guess, but like postpartum is a special breed because it's playing to that. This is what you used to be, and you can get it back. Whereas I suppose a lot of generic things is you want 6-pack abs, and this is how you'll get it.
Yeah,
it's just like a very specific play to get people to. And
it's when females are feeling the most insecure about how they look, because they've gone through such a big change. And it's easy to manipulate pictures to make you look different at that stage as well.
It's interesting that I don't know why it's cropped up into my head, but maybe it's like sometimes a cultural thing. Maybe like traditionally amongst men, but probably with everyone now, that scars are kind of like cool. It's kind of almost like battle wounds to have, like, I don't know, a scar from your like terrible mountain biking accident or whatever. Do you think that should women look at childbirth in that way, where it's like I don't mean it's like a scar in a negative way, but it's like something that you've accrued that's like just a wound of life, and it's a positive thing. It shows that you've done something incredible, like squeezing a human out your inside. God, it's going to be really inappropriate for like.
Yeah, I think, and it's hard as well because we're brought up into a society where the like round soft edges of like the female body aren't shown ever. Like it's changing more now, but like we're not used to seeing skin folding over the side of leggings as being a negative thing, not just a thing. Like it doesn't need to be positive, it doesn't need to be negative, it's just there. And it'd be nice to get to the stage where it doesn't even need to be a thing. And I guess that's what I'd want to teach Lucy as well, because I'd find myself hiding. Like, you want to wear the high-waisted leggings or whatever to hide your tummy, or like suck it in a little bit more, but making an effort to just make it normal. Like, it doesn't even need to be like a prominent scar that's like, whoa. But it's just normal. It's not anything. That sounds bad, because obviously childbirth and stuff is something.
Well, it's like something you should be proud of, I guess, rather
than. But it doesn't. It's not even worth mentioning. That sounds bad as well, because it makes it sound like it's not something good. I can't get across what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, I know. Like, I shouldn't instantly have a negative connotation about it.
Yeah, it shouldn't have. Yeah.
There shouldn't be a need to talk about it, but it should just be seen as a positive thing.
I'm better at writing than I am at speaking.
If you want to
words come better down on paper than they do on my mouth.
Oh, that's actually quite a good play into, I suppose, to wrap up. Like, you have a blog, don't you?
Loosely.
You don't use it for
anymore.
You have an Instagram as well.
Having the time. Hello. The sacrificing things, writing's definitely been sacrificed.
Climbing takes priority over.
Yeah.
Thankfully, cleaning the house is still underneath writing. We still don't tidy your house very much. But yeah, so if people want to sort of see more, hear more about your life, small children trying to go climbing.
Maybe in the next year I might post another blog post.
Yeah. Yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye out in the next decade for a new blog. Oh, honey. Oh, sweetie.
Yeah, we can pop a link to your blog somehow in this podcast description. Don't know how it works.
How long have we been talking for?